I'm Juan Martinez. I'm Senior Product Manager at Sony Electronics, and this is my fault. So I'm very pleased to be here. I just want to know, how many of you have used the FS7 or played with it and so on? And you own it? Any? Okay, that's great. And what were you using before? You're using DSLRs, people using DSLRs or other production cameras? FS700s. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to give you an overview of the FS7. I'm going to go real quick. You're welcome to ask questions as I go along. And I have some footage I want to share with you, some stuff I want to show you. And so with any more delay, let's go ahead. So just want to point out the FS7 belongs to the XDCAM family of cameras. And previously, the designation for the XDCAM camcorder was PMW. So you had like an EX series camera or a shoulder mount, it would be a PMW-F something or a PMW EX1 or EX3 or so on. And now XDCAM has been updated. So the previous XDCAM cameras were all using the XDCAM codec. We know that. It's a 50 megabit, 422, 8-bit depth codec, MPEG-2. And currently now because the cameras have a lot more dynamic range and greater color gamut, is the ability to express and capture finer tonal gradations. We have now increased the quality of the compression on XDCAM cameras to adopt the AVC, XAVC codec. So this is MPEG-4, the highest level and profile that is allowed by the standard. So it's not, but it's a Sony format because we have our own wrapper, our own MXF wrapper. All the and the compression, it is created by Sony. I don't know if you're familiar with MPEG. So MPEG is an association, that works on developing these compression systems, and they create standards. But the standards don't have a definite, let's say, instructions on how to compress something. In the case of MPEG, is brilliant. From the beginning, the direction is that you have to create files that are compatible with the standard decoder. So in the case of MPEG, the decoder is very rigorously defined, but the encoding, it's not. So you're free to use whatever algorithm, any of the tools in any way, as long as it creates files that can be decoded by the standard decoder. So if you have the same MPEG compression from one manufacturer, it may not look the same, even though they both play back on the same decoder, it may not be the same quality. It all depends on how powerful an encoding system you have. So how many cores, how brilliant the compression algorithms are, how the tools are used. And for example, I'm not going to dwell into this because we can talk for many hours about this, but just wanted to point it out. This camera, and the same as the F5 and 55, the compression engine on this camera uses something that Sony developed for Blu-ray encoding, which is dual pass. So when you're doing compression, you want to be able to use your bitrate budget in the most efficient way. So we compress and look at the results, and then it does an optimization, and then there's a final compression based on all the pre-compression results. And the other thing that we do is that we change the optimization frame by frame. Because if you're shooting at a very easy image, like him with an easy background, And then you pan around, and there's something, let's say, with trees and many leaves fluttering on the trees. It requires different compression optimization. And we do this every frame. And we store the compression parameters within the stream. So if you do, applications could read this information. If they need to recompress the same data further downstream, they can use the same parameters, and then it could be recompressed losslessly. So it's pretty awesome. Some of our competitors are using MPEG-4. When you start recording, they use the first frame to optimize the compression. And then it no longer looks at it. It doesn't matter if the image changes in complexity, it becomes simpler or more challenging. It's not used. So these are the kind of things that Sony is providing. This camera is very small and lightweight, and because these circuits are created with the same technology that Intel would use to create the most advanced CPUs, then it's possible to have that much power on a camera, and yet it doesn't run very hot, and it doesn't draw a lot of current. Anyway, so just wanted to make that point. So the applications, this camera is a very powerful camera, but it's really made for unscripted television production, for long form, for documentaries. It's a cinema verite camera. Reality TV, magazine shows, and any other kind of unscripted TV. And you're going to see why. It's also very suitable for low-budget productions as well. It has very powerful technologies. It has a 4K Super 35 millimeter sensor with 12 million pixels. It has a 16-bit A to D converter. So this means the image sensor is seeing 65,535 shades of red or blue or green each. So it's in the billions and billions, the possible color reproduction. That's why we can capture this tremendous wide color gamut. It has a very high sensitivity, so it's ISO 2000, and it has 14 stops latitude, so it can capture very wide dynamic range, so the windows don't need to look blown anymore. It has S-gamut. It has logarithmic gammas. Sony invented S-gamut, and we have what we call color grading spaces. So this camera offers S-log3 and S-gamut 3.cine, or S-log3 and S-gamut, S-log2 and S-gamut. All of these, you have all these choices of various different log curves. The .cine color space is a little bit smaller than the full color space that the camera can capture. And this is a very good thing, because it's very challenging to grade from a huge, bigger than 2020 color gamut down to ITU 709. It is the .cine color space is bigger than DCI, and is within easy reach of 709, so it's very easy to grade. And the stuff I'm going to show you later is all shot in the .cine color space. So we can record 4K on board. The camera has a magnesium frame, and this is a really cool thing. It's fully metal. The frame and the body are made out of magnesium. It's not plastic. And it has environmentally sealed electronics, including the image sensor and the filters. And this is very good because it prevents dust infiltration or water while you're running and gunning outside. So how is this camera different than other cameras? First thing is Sony quality. So this has the same tradition, the same build quality, the same electronics and reliability that Sony has been delivering all along. It also has 4 things that makes it very different. It makes it especially efficient for long-form productions. It has handheld, rigless electronics. So the camera is designed to be operated without any of these fantastic rigs that are commonly used these days. It is designed to hug your body, and with this lever, it makes it very easy to hold the camera for a very long time, even with a heavy zoom lens in front. The camera has an alpha lens system, so this is compatible with E-mount, and this is an important thing. And of course, it supports other lenses, including third-party lenses. You can put Leica lenses, you can put Nikon lenses, you can put Canon lenses, of course. And we use the XAVC codec, and we have XAVC long. So the first XDCAM family of products with MPEG-2, there's a long GOP codec. And there were many manufacturers that, while they didn't have long GOP, they were criticizing it. But XDCAM became that de facto standard for production. And now even Canon, when they came out with the C-series camera, the C300, they adopted the XDCAM codec, the MPEG-2. And of course, XQD memory cards. Now, I said that we're using magnesium for the body and the chassis of the camera. And magnesium, it is a lot more expensive to produce a camera using magnesium because we have to make special steel molds to create the body and the chassis of the camera. Aluminum is a lot easier to make, but this is stronger, it's more stable with temperature changes. So if you go somewhere very hot or very cold, the camera is not going to change dimension. It's not going to put any stress on the lens mount and have back focus problems or other issues. It also is recyclable and lighter for the weight. So it's 33% lighter than aluminum. And as I mentioned before, we have environmentally sealed electronics. And then we have liquid cool oil pipes running from the electronics and the image sensor to a heat exchanger. And this is computer control. So, and very quiet fan. You're not going to hear the noise. It's not going to get into your recording. And you don't need to add any oil. This is an image of the system. You can see this is blown on this side of the camera. And you can see the radiator, the fins, and the heat pipes running up to it. So let's look at the handheld electronics. Sorry, I'm a ham. So one of the interesting things is that the body of the camera is only 4 pounds. So, and if we add the rest of the stuff, except the lens, is in that as 6 pounds. So it's very light. This is including the battery and the electrons in the battery. And it's designed to, we had a lot of feedback. So we asked many of you, when we were thinking of designing this camera, we interviewed a lot of people. And some people told us that they like to hold the camera in front of them. Some people told us that they want the camera on the shoulder. And so we designed a camera that could be used for all of those applications. Of course, we are inspired by the Super 16 millimeter French cameras like the Aton and Eclair and so on. So if you look at this image, you can see that on this first frame here on the left, he's cradling the camera in his lap. And looking at the eyepiece, looking at the LCD without the eyepiece on it. And over here, just operating the camera from the top handle where there's a record button and a zoom, and very gracefully holding it. You don't even need this arm. You can take this off. All of these controls are also duplicated on the camera body itself. Over here, he has a camera up against his chest. And again, he's not using the eyepiece. And on the rightmost, the camera is then being used as a shoulder mount, handheld shoulder with the eyepiece and so on. So it is incredibly flexible and allows operating from any position. You can virtually flip this eyepiece to the rear, so you can be on a tripod, or facing this way, so you can stand on this side of the camera. So if you're in a constrained space, you can do that, or flip it forward and invert the image so you can look for view it correctly. So this has the most flexible viewfinder system of any other camera out there. And quite frankly, from the industrial design, I've worked on many camera systems over my life. This is the best design I've ever been involved with. The camera has many assignable functionalities. There's wonderful things it can do. One of my favorite ones is high-low. That lets you check exposure. If you're shooting flat in the S-log modes, you can invoke this mode. If you have a 3D LUT applied in the viewfinder, you can press it once to see into the highlights, and then press it again to see into the blacks, to see the shaded parts of the scene, press it back to return to the normal. Because there's even an OLED display cannot display the full 14 stops that the camera can capture. So by doing this, you can have a real quick visual representation and an easy way to check. And the stuff that I'm going to show you, the footage, that's how I exposed. I use that method. But what I really wanted to show you, wanted to talk about, is that this camera has assignable dials. There's one assignable dial here on the smart grip, and there's another one here on the camera body. And each one of these dials can be individually configured to control either the iris aperture, or the ISO gain, or focus, or the audio level. So both of them are separately configurable. And the buttons are very large and easy to operate even with gloves. And so this is assignable 1, which is normally SNQs. You all know what SNQ stands for? Slow and quick. So the camera can crank from 1 frame per second up to 60 frames per second in single frame increments. You can select the cranking speed. And from 60 on, depending on the format, it can go up, and let's say in HD Intra, up to 180 frames per second. Or in XAVC Long, up to 120 frames per second HD. And so it's very easy just to push the button and invoke the feature. This is assignable 2, which is iris, auto or manual. And the last one is a user menu. All of the connectors face backwards. So this is like the headphone or the power switch. The other dial I didn't mention is over here. And power switch, everything is recessed and protected so that it won't misoperate. The same thing with the viewfinder cable. It hugs the body of the camera. And even if you have a XLR connected, it's facing backwards. So this is not going to snag into anything you can do. You can run and gun. You can move around without any fear of getting caught. There are 2 SDIs. The SDIs are 3G, and they're always 42210-bit. And there's one HDMI, and the HDMI could be 4K, UHD, or HD, 42210-bit. It's set at 60p, in which case it is 8-bit 420 due to limitations of the HDMI standard. One really powerful feature that the camera supports is it has an MI shoe. The MI shoe can support different types of accessories. One of them is a light. You can have a light. I don't really care for a light because the camera is very sensitive. But I really love being able to have my wireless receiver on the MI shoe, because I don't need to have a battery on my wireless receiver. When I turn the camera on, the wireless receiver comes on. When I turn it off, it turns off automatically. And I don't need any audio cables. It sends a signal right through the MI shoe. And this Sony UWPD is incredibly powerful. There are many small audio, wireless audio systems, like the one I'm using here from some German company. And they have two antennas, but both antennas are connected to the same tuner. On the Sony UWPD, it has two tuners. This is a true diversity. I don't know if you ever heard the word diversity receiver. This is a true diversity receiver. There are two tuners in here, and it's selecting the signal from the strongest, whichever tuner has the strongest signal. So this is not going to fade on you or drop off as easily as these systems that have both antennas tied to the same. And it's pretty smart. It's also made out of magnesium, but it's pretty smart. The receiver can scan the spectrum and find empty channels, unused wireless channels. And then it can program the transmitter. There's a little IR port and can do that automatically. So you can go on location, you can find an audio channel and get rolling right away. It's not like having to talk to the frequency coordinator or running around with papers with frequencies and so on. So this is, I think, is one of the most wonderful things. You see, it just came on because I put it in. All right, so this is what it looks like. And the next thing is the FLN system. So the camera has a native E-mount. And I don't know if you're familiar with Konica Minolta. You ever heard that names? So Konica Minolta is a legendary camera and lens manufacturer. They actually made lenses for lights, Leica. And it was the first company to ever develop a proper light metering system. So it had a very high technology. And these copal shutters that we use these days with the magnesium and so on, or titanium, they were part of the development of this technology. In any case, they had fallen behind. Canon and Nikon got ahead of them. And Sony bought them out. And overnight, we became a famous lens maker. And they had a lot of tradition, but their production lines were kind of antiquated, a lot of hand polishing and so on. We then created a state-of-the-art factory in Koto, Japan, and another one in Thailand. And nowadays, we're producing lenses like these that have compound, they have groups. They are compound aspherical. These are not just a simple curves. These are lenses that have very complex shapes, and they're made to go mate up against each other. And tolerances in the Armstrongs. An Armstrong is 1,000 of a micron. So you can measure it by the width of the light rays. So it's very, very precise. And we can do this with 95% yields. So we are now state of the art. The other thing is that because Minolta had fallen behind and Nikon and Canon lenses were incompatible with the Minolta bodies, Sony then decided to create cameras that did not require a mirror box and a new mount. It's the E-mount, the mount that we use on this camera. And this E-mount was designed from the beginning to be not only for still images, but also for motion. And this is why we can open and close the iris in hundredths of a stop. And this is why we can make zoom lenses, because we can control all the protocol. The communication protocol is already designed from the beginning for the application. It's not only made for still. The lenses that are made for still, they don't need to open an iris with very high precision. They just need to get quickly to a certain stop. And so you're using a lens that was designed for a DSLR is going to open and close in 1/3 of a stop or 1/4 of a stop increments. This is 1/100th of a stop increments. And of course, we can use virtually any other lens. One of the things that the design of the E-mount is also that it has the shortest flange distance. So it's only 18 millimeters. So you can put lenses on this camera that are designed for rangefinder cameras like a Leica. So you can put Leica R or Leica M lenses on this camera because this has such a short flange that those lenses will be able to focus on this camera. So this gives you simple mechanical adapter. You can virtually put any lens on it. You don't need to have any optics or anything on it. So this is what the E-mount looks like. And in the case of this camera, this is made entirely of stainless steel. It is very robust. And I just wanted to, this is a frame grab. My Mac looks good. This thing is acting up. And you can see, you cannot see, but I'm going to blow it up for you. So this is the iris F number. You can see the F5.54. So this is hundreds of a stop resolution. And the same thing with the focusing is 3 digits. So this is down to a millimeter, which is less than 30 seconds of an inch. It's very amazing. In this case, the zoom lens was at the very end. It was shot with this lens, so the zoom position was 0 and in the 135 millimeter. But we do capture the aperture. And now, there are many lenses, A-mount and E-mount lenses, and you can use these A-mount lenses with the adapter. Total, between the two, is 56 altogether. And when you use A-mount lenses with the camera can do face detection autofocus. And that lets you do very precise focusing. And it's possible to even do this while they're shooting at high frame rates, or even at 240 frames per second, the camera can track an object that is moving with the face detection and autofocus. We continue to develop more and more lenses, and these are the latest ones that we introduced at Photokina. These are all very high quality lenses. These lenses, these new E-mount lenses, the first E-mount lenses were inexpensive because they were for inexpensive cameras. But these new ones, they're designed to go in the Alpha A7R. That has 36 million pixels, and it can capture over 14 stops latitude. So this camera will be able to, all these defects will become apparent. If there were any defects, optical defects will become apparent on the A7R. And so the lenses have to be built to a very high standard. And of course, they're compatible with the FS7 as well. So all of these new lenses, they're great. And please note that all the zoom lenses have OSS. So this is optical stabilization, which is an important thing when you're running and gunning. So now we have 3 servo zoom lenses. Your super 35 millimeter lenses, servo zooms are very expensive. The Cine lenses, this is $40,000. There's a Canon lens, $31,000. But we have now 3 of them. This one is the 18-105G. I was speaking with one of the people here before. It has a very good range from 18 millimeters to 105 millimeters. It's also internal focus and internal zoom, just like the kit lens, which is 28-135. And there's 18-200 as well. This is the kit lens. This has hard stops for the focus, or it could be electronic. And you can override the electronic. And the zoom also has hard stops. And the iris can click or not. So you can turn the click off. And also has stops and markings. There are markings on the lens. So this lens does not breathe. So if you zoom all the way in and you change the focus, the image is not going to change size. while you're zooming, it's not going to swim around. The image is not going to move around. And there's no ramping. So as you zoom in, the image will remain with the same brightness as it was at full white. Yes, there was somebody with a question.
Yeah, I tried that lens at Photo Plus, and it seemed like there was a slight lag when you zoomed in.
There's a slight lag when you zoom because this is not mechanically controlled. So this is controlled with very precise. So if you whip it, there's a lag. If you normally open and close it, there's no lag. This, of course, is digitally controlled. It has linear motors to control it, and there is a limit to the speed that the motor can run at. Now, the lens that you saw, a Photo Plus, was a prototype. This is a production lens. After we're done, please play with it and see if there's any difference. I'm very interested in your feedback. Yes?
I saw on your list a very wide-angle converter.
Oh, yes. Yes, I apologize. I was just trying not to take too much time. Yes, so these are the new lenses that we introduced at Photokina. There's a wide range zoom, 24 to 240 millimeter. There is a f2.8, a 28 millimeter f2, sorry. And there are two adapters for it. There's a ultra wide angle adapter. It means it's no geometric distortion, but very good angle of view. And there's a fisheye adapter for it as well. So these go in front of the 28 millimeter f2.8 lens. And there is a very fast prime, f1.4, 35 millimeter. And this one, I'm dying to get my fingers on it. It's my grubby paws on it. It's a 90 millimeter f2.8 macro. Of course, with optical stabilization. These are beautiful lenses so far.
So the converter is 0.7 or something like that?
Is I don't know the exact details, but you give me your information, I'll get back to you with the details. This may be online. This is probably online already because we announced this at Photokina. We can, maybe even the Adorama staff is familiar because they sell these stuffs here. Anyway, so let me advance. Yeah, so very nice quality. This is the 18-105. All of these lenses allow you to zoom with a little rocker on the side. And this is, if you have let's say an A7S, you can use this as a B-roll camera, and you can share the same lenses. All of these lenses, those lenses that are available now, they're all made for full frame cameras, including this one. There are other lenses that I really love that I don't have here. There's a 10 to 18 millimeters. This is not full frame. Has virtually no geometric distortion. It is sharp as a tack, and is absolutely beautiful. I have one of those, and I just love it. So the codecs, the camera can record RAW if you have the XDCA adapter, and it can do dual recording. It can record XAVC or MPEG-2 and so on simultaneously. Or it can record these codecs individually. And very soon, we will deploy the ProRes. So if you have the XDCA, this will be a firmware update at no additional cost. So if you already purchased the XDCA, you can install the ProRes codec in the XDCA, and then that will appear here as another choice. And these are very high quality lenses. Of course, we still support legacy MPEG-2 8-bit 50 megabits per second.
What if,
Yes.
what if you have an Australian monitor recorder that just came out? Will that spit out everything through?
Yes, this, what we spit out of the HDMI or the SDI is uncompressed. And as long as a recorder supports it. So there's like, for example, there are many little monitors out there, these 5-inch monitors on TV Logics and other stuff. And people don't realize that most of these monitors, many of them do not support every frame rate. So they may not support a real progressive signal. They only want to see 60i, or they want to see something else. And then they're confused when they select a frame rate in the camera and suddenly their little monitor stops working. So you need to look at the specifications of your recorder or display. But yes, many of the existing recorders support this, and we're working with third-party recorder manufacturers to support our products. We want to empower you. We want to make powerful cameras that let you do things that couldn't be done before. And we're working with third parties to then increase the capabilities of the camera. So internally, we had the XAVC codecs that I mentioned before. Just want to mention that there's two different kinds. There's XAVC, which is professional, and there's XAVC-S, which is consumer. And the consumer is always 420 8-bit, and it's wrapped in MPEG-4. And the professional could be either long up or interframe, and these are the possible resolutions. This is the standard. It doesn't mean that there's any camera out there now that records 444 XAVC, so I don't want to hear. I saw Juan Martinez say that at Adorama. It's just the standard. The cameras currently, the F55 and the 5 and the FS7 support 422. And the FS7 supports 420 as well. This is a frame shot with the S-Log3. Is there any way to kill the lights? Anyway, I just want to know, if you look all the way to the right on the side of the screen, this is not a great monitor, but you can see the details in the shaded parts of the scene. This is shot S-Log3 flat with the camera, XAVC Intra, UHD. So this is 4K with a 16:9 aspect ratio and ISO 2000. And then I graded this using Catalyst. And if you look underneath the Williamsburg Bridge, you can see all the beams. They're faithfully reproduced, even though this is incredibly dark. And the night sky, we can see the school bus has the appropriate color. And this is all mixed lighting, really horrible lighting. If you look across the water to the other side where you see some tail lights, you can see that they are red. They're not white. They're not being blown. So the camera is capturing the full dynamic range, the full exposure latitude, and all of the gradations, all the latitude. I have this as a clip. I can show it to you later if you're interested. And here's another clip. This is now long up. And so this is, you can see the texture on the bumblebee, the segments on the antenna, all the very fine and the incredibly beautiful color gradations on the flowers, so faithfully captured. This was shot long up. And I applied, this was shot flat, S-Log3, S-Gamma 3.cine. And then I applied an LC709A lot and baked it into the image. So I let the camera do the color grading, so to speak. Somebody's going to yell at me for saying that. But the camera is doing that development. And that's what I got. Because I was concerned, all these S-logs, all these logarithmic gammas, all this lets you capture the full dynamic range because other gammas won't let you. If you use a broadcast gamma, the ITU 79 gamma, you can only capture 200% dynamic range. This camera, the sensor on this camera puts out 1300%. So you can only see 200%, you're not getting anything. Now we have hypergammas that let you capture some of them 325, some of them 460, and some of them 800%. But that's as far as it goes. Only the logarithmic gammas let you capture the 14 stops. So in this case, I captured this with using the logarithmic gamma, but considering that some people need to turn their work over to their client at the end of the day. Some of them, even fancy people like CBS 60 Minutes, they don't grade in New York. They have to turn something that they can use. And so that was the purpose of this idea. And as you can see, it turned out very nicely. So these are all the codecs that the camera supports internally. Soon we're going to support 4096 by 2160 also. Currently it's only 16 by 9, it's not 17 by 9. You're not, you should always choose the codec depending on how you're going to distribute. If you're going to distribute for television, you should shoot in UHD. You should shoot in 16 by 9. If you shoot in 4K, please don't scale the image. Don't zoom it in or zoom it out because you're going to destroy the quality of the image. The scaling is very damaging to an image. You can crop it. You can saw off the top or saw off the side panels. That is no problem. But we will give you the choice. So if you have theatrical distribution, 4096 by 2160, and it's for television distribution, 3840 by 2160. And of course, these are the record times. So this is one of the important things of the XAVC. It's a very efficient codec. It is a acquisition codec, and we can capture very long record times even at 4K. Yeah, because if you look at 4K at 2398, we can record 35 minutes. The bit rate is 240 megabits per second. 240 megabits per second is almost the same. It's only 20 megabits per second higher than ProRes at HD. So here you're recording 4K, 4 times the amount of information with only 20 megabits more, because this is a more efficient codec. And this is intraframe, not long up. If I use long up, then I can record 8 times more than ProRes. I love ProRes. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I don't think it's really great acquisition codec because it's inefficient. It has very high bit rates. Of course, this is why it has very nice picture quality. But we also achieve unbelievable picture quality with much more efficient compression. And these are all intraframe codecs. And, intraframe, and these are long up. And if you look at the long up, 4K, 2398 is 100 megabits per second. That's how I shot the B. That's the bit rate for that B. And in the case of HD, we have either 50 megabit or 35 megabits. So this gives us 2 hours on a 64 gigabyte card, or 170 minutes on the same 64 gigabyte card. And of course, MPEG-2 is also supported at both 720p and 1920 by 1080. If you do have the XDCA adapter in the camera, you can record RAW to an external recorder, or you can record ProRes in the camera once we deploy the standard. I mean the firmware. Just real quick, we also have picture cache. So if you're waiting for an event to happen, you press recording and it gives you X number of seconds. It varies depending on the format that you use. We have 2 softwares, Catalyst Browse and Catalyst Prepare, that I've used to play back, and that will play back all the different files. In the case of ProRes, this has been the camera is sending the raw signal to the expansion box, and then it's getting encoded as ProRes and sent back to be recorded on the XQD cards. The last thing is the XQD memory. The only things that you need to remember about this is that these cards are made for the purpose. This is like S/S. This is not like using an SD card or a CF card or something that is a generic memory card. These cards are made for capturing the image. And Sony, developed something called EB-Stream. And it's a protocol where the camera is in constant communication with the card and confirming that it is recording. And it also optimizing the card for recording whatever format you're recording and bitrate. So Have you ever, any person here has experience using the Sony S/S camera or Sony XQD camera issue a media not guaranteed error message? You ever seen this? I see some people nodding. What this means is the camera tried to talk to the card and have a handshake for the EB stream, and the card did not reply. So then the camera is saying, okay, I will push the information out to that, whatever is on the other end, and try to record, but we do not guarantee that it's recording. So that's what the media not guarantee error message. For example, Lexar XQD cards do not have EB stream. So if you put a Lexar card on this camera, it's going to give you that error message. I've used Lexar cards on this camera, and I've recorded even 4K. It records fine. But I get that error message. Now, if you have something that is mission critical, you want to make sure that you use something that you know what you're getting. Plus, if something happens, the camera will recover the data. So if any catastrophic thing will happen, even if somebody your assistant pulls a card out of the camera before the file is closed, you put the card back in the camera and it recovers. Or you can send the cards to Sony. And even if something horrible would happen, in most instances, we can recover the data for you. That's one of the things that Sony offers. You all familiar? Any of you familiar with POSI? So we have something called Product Operational Support Center in Teaneck, New Jersey. It opens from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and there are experts that will answer any product questions. If you have any difficulty operating a product, or if you think maybe there's something wrong, or they can even answer some workflow questions as well. They cannot teach you how to edit or how to grade, but they can answer if you need a plugin, or if this software is compatible or not, or what do you need to make something work. All of these things are available. So, and if you ever encounter a problem with media, you can send this to them, and then this goes to here in the United States to some place, and if we cannot recover it, it goes to Japan. And I yet to see a case where we couldn't deal with it. So this is very fast. I shot in Dumbo that stuff with the Williamsburg Bridge, and in the World Trade Center, and it was 101 gigabytes. I transferred the contents of this card with the supplied adapter. When you get a card, you get an adapter with it in less than 4.5 minutes. Less than 4.5 minutes, I have everything transferred to this MacBook Pro via the USB 3. So, I'm pretty much done. This is the XDCA. This is the back end of the XDCA. We do have Genlock, DC in, DC out. It is a reference output. And in Genlock, we have H-face adjustments. So it's very precise and very, very cool. And of course, we can record RAW with the XDCA to Sony or third-party recording solutions. And that's it. So I want to show you some footage and answer questions if you have any. So this is the B. You can see all the veins on the. Is there a way to kill the light? You can see all the veins on the bee's wings and the fuzz on her back. Can you see that from back there? Probably not. You can come forward after it's over if you want. You can look at it on my computer screen. And all the very subtle color gradations. This is another scene. These are some. I shot this in the autumn with a very early engineering mule FS7, and I baked in the lot again.
Do you remember what lenses you were using?
This, yeah, for this and the B, it was the zoom lens. This lens is very sharp all the way out to the corners. And it has very high contrast. It looks beautiful. There are other lenses that really impress the hell out of me. One of them is the 55-F1.8. That lens just refuses to flare. You'll know who Panabaker is? Very famous documentary. And he's pretty old now, but he's still filming. And I went to show him the camera at his home. And he's sitting at his desk, and there's this window right behind him. And this light is just pouring in. And shot a little bit, unbeknownst to him. And on the his face, I can, all the fine detail, nothing, the blacks are not elevated. It doesn't look milky. There's no flare whatsoever. It looks really awesome. And I shot some stuff here too with that lens. Let me see if I'll find it for you. And it's really spectacular. All right, this is shot with a 55-F1.8. And unfortunately, this, you see the aliasing on that leaf that's standing up? That is because the scaling artifacts. Let me, I'll zoom for you. See, there's no more artifacts. You can see how sharp this is, and that LCD panel really doesn't do it justice because it doesn't have enough contrast. If you look at it here or on my computer screen, you can see a lot more detail. So this is a combination of a beautiful ergonomics, very small, lightweight camera that can use DSLR or still camera lenses as well as motion lenses. Of course, you can put PL mount lenses on it, and shoot like people could with a Super 16mm camera. You could have one zoom and a couple of primes, or a couple of zooms and one prime and go anywhere. I put the camera in a bag, and I've had 2 FS7s and lenses in this one bag. If I take them apart, if I don't take them apart, I can have one camera and a few lenses in the bag. It's incredibly flexible. As I mentioned before, you can even have this facing this side or this side, or I can put this. I can have it on the rear of the camera while I'm operating on a tripod. Yes.
Just going back a little, what's the relationship between S-Log3 and 2000 ISO?
Well, S-Log3, and that's a very good question. So S-Log3 is a logarithmic curve that we've developed. It's based on the Cineon curve. And typically, the ISO rating of a camera is where middle gray lies at a certain gamma. Because when you change the gamma curve may rise faster out of the blacks or slower out of the blacks. So then middle gray is going to be at a higher ISO or a lower ISO. So in this case, middle gray, 18% gray on your chart is at 50% with ISO 2000. The other thing to remember is that of course, if you're shooting in the Cine-AI, the camera has 2 operation modes. It has a Cine-AI mode, and in Cine-AI mode, you can change all these parameters, but you're not really changing anything at all. All you're doing is changing the metadata. So it's recording like film, and then you develop it in post-production, unless you apply a lot like I did, and then you're developing in the camera. And the other mode is custom. In custom, you can change the master gain. So I can select S-Log3 in custom, but then I can change the gain if I like to. Or I can change parameters, I can change things. And if you change the gain, then what you're doing is the camera can only see this from black to peak white, and then you're moving this window up or you're moving it down. And if you move it up or down, you're either cutting the highlights or cutting the blacks. So S-Log3 and Cine mode, the camera is showing you everything it can capture. And you can then, in grading, you have all that information, just like what I shot at Williamsburg Bridge. When I looked at the image, it looks very flat and unsaturated. But then, very simply, I can, very quickly, less than 5 minutes, I can make it look good. And it's something that, at first, is the first time I tried, it was a little challenging, and I then overcomplicated things. But then I start playing with with Callus or the same thing with Resolve, and I quickly realized I could just change the 1D tone curve, and I can achieve these beautiful results without having to do lift gamma gain and do all these adjustments, very complicated adjustments. The ISO 2000 is the native ISO of the camera. You can rate the camera. Let's say that you want to shoot green screen. And quite frankly, not every scene has 14 stops of latitudes. It's okay if you're going to cut the highlights. And let's say that you want to have very low noise. So then you can rate the camera. You can overexpose by rating the camera at a lower ISO. So you can say this is ISO 800 or ISO 640. And you rate it as such. You expose for it as if it were only ISO 800. And you can change the ISO on the side of the camera. If you have a lot of ply, it will change. You can see it with your eyeballs. But you're not really changing the ISO. You're just exposing that way. And you rate it that way. And then when you develop it in post, then you have less noise because you're not applying as much gain.
Just to finish this, the one prior to that, the 700, I think, the high-speed camera.
Yes.
That's the one I couldn't shoot at S-Log3 because it was asking me to be at a high SA. It was too much in the class.
Yes. In the case of the FS700, is a much simpler camera, so it doesn't have as much capability as the FS7. And that camera can apply S-Log2. And when you select the picture profile 7, sorry, and then it selects the S-Log2 protocol. And there's some play, but it's not as much. And of course, when you develop it, you need to take these things into account because it's applying a log curve to the signal. Yes?
Your shutter speed, you can select either the angle
You can.
or the speed.
That's correct.
Is it two different names for the same thing?
It's two different names for the same thing, but it's two different ways of doing it. Let's say if you select shutter angle, and now you choose 180 degree. If you're shooting at 24 piece, the shutter is going to be 1/48. So half of the actual, so the full frame will be 1/24, but the half of that is 1/48 of a second. But if you're shooting at 60 frames per second, if you choose 60p, then it will be 1/30th of a second. Or if you shoot at a high frame rate, it's going to be always half of the frame. If you shoot shutter speed, then you choose a time. This is how long the exposure is going to be. And then that is how long the exposure is going to happen, regardless. Not exactly regardless, because depending if you change it to a frame rate that then doesn't allow such a long exposure, but it is depending on the time that you select it. So there are two different ways of using the same thing. So in essence, you're selecting, okay, so the frame has a duration, right? So let's say a 24p recording is every 24th of a second, there's a new frame. So, but you select 180 degree, the camera is will expose for 1/40th of a second, and then at the middle, at 180 degree position, it will then reset back to black, so that all the information in the sensor will go back to black, and then we'll expose for another 48th of a second. And at the end, that is the image that's going to be transferred and recorded. If you set the shutter speed for 360 or shutter off, then it's going to expose for 1/24th of a second, and then at the very end, transfer that. If you set it for less, so the 200, let's say 11 degrees, because you want to have, like Saving Private Ryan, it's a very jittery, crazy looking image, then it's going to expose for a long time, and then reset to 0, and then expose for the remaining 11 degrees. So, did that make sense? Yeah.
Also, I'm planning to go up north where temperatures are really extreme.
Mm-hmm.
What seems to be your experience? I know it's rated for minus.
Yeah, the specifications are set by the lawyers, and they're from they're always the same from this range to that range. The reality is we have people shoot the Iditarod or go in the North Pole or whatever. You need to be careful handling the equipment, but it does work in extreme. So when the QA that we do at Sony, the camera is tested at very high temperatures, at very low temperatures, and at very high altitude, like the altitude of the Himalayas or down to sea level, very low. So high pressures, low pressures. We try to break the camera. We put it in beds that shake the camera to see if something is going to come loose. So to test those things, we drop them in every corner. We do apply electromagnetic discharges to all of the controls and everywhere. We do these things in QA, but the specifications are then very conservative. For example, that record time I showed you, that is only considering that you're using 70% of the capacity of the card to record. I tried changing that because I have always calculated the record time based on 90% usage of the card, assuming that there's going to be some metadata and audio and so on. So 90% is very conservative, but the engineers in Atsugi, Japan, had chosen 70%, and they wouldn't let me change it. So when you put the card on the camera, it's going to report much longer record time than what the official specification is. Yes?
What I'm mostly concerned is changing lenses when the temperatures are really cold and the cavity is open for a few seconds.
Well, I would, if it's raining or snowing or something, I would do it in a bag. But being cold, I think it's not a problem. You want to put some hand warmers or something. I think it's very a logical thing. Lenses do have mechanisms that can get sluggish with the temperature, so they usually work okay, but you want to not really have them at minus whatever. But I've shot in very cold weather with this camera. I got sick with the camera. I had no problem.
What do you call very cold?
Well, I've shot in 16-degree or 10-degree weather with a camera, and I got sick. It's the truth. But we don't. The specifications say that is from 0 to 40 degrees centigrade. So. Yes, sir. You had a question.
I was going to ask to see the video of the Williamsburg.
Oh, the Williamsburg Bridge. Sure. You have a question?
Yeah, this Catalyst software, is this to replace like a competitor to DaVinci? And does it integrate well with the Adobe suite?
No, my apologies. Our intention, the Catalyst software, there's 2 versions of it. Our intention is not to compete with DaVinci or with Adobe or Apple. Our intention is to create software that you will use this first. It will give you some benefit. And I'm trying to apply, we have some ideas to apply some functionality that will be really nice interactivity with the camera. And there's 2 versions. Browse is made for your client. So currently, before we had something called Content Browser. But Content Browser had a license fee of $20. And all of you guys were pretty upset that if you have a client and your client needs to see your footage, they have to pay $20 for the license. So Catalyst Browse is free. And it has the same capability. What I'm using here is Prepare. Let me close Prepare. And let me open Browse. So this green icon is Prepare, and this purple icon is Browse. And Browse, for example, I can still do color grading. So I can adjust the color, but if I change it, it changes it will grade all the rest of the clips in the collection with the same, apply the same grading. So this is from the same day. So I really love this image. This is a World Trade Center. You can see the reflection of the building and this other black building right next to it. Of course, the policeman came and made us move, and then I lost this beautiful reflection and bumped into the tripod also. Lack of craft. Sorry. That's what you guys provide is so the knowledge. So this is the Williamsburg Bridge. And if you see it on my screen, it looks the black's a little bit further down, and it looks a little bit better. That LCD panel, that's all I can do. You're welcome to look at this here. Yes?
So when you're baking in a LUT, can you upload your own LUT into the camera?
Yes, you can. You can create LUTs with, let's say, Resolve.
Right.
So Resolve has the ability to create LUTs, and you can shoot a shot. And let's say you want to match another camera to this camera. You can shoot a chart and have Resolve automatically create a LUT, a 3D LUT. And then you can load that LUT into this camera. So this will take cube LUTs. And
can you then, say you're shooting S-Log 3, you're uploading LUT, can you then bake that in and show it to the
yes, you can.
live?
Yes, you can. So you can have user LUTs. You can have 1D. So You can have 3D LUTs, which is what Resolve does, or you're going to have just the gamma curve. So what we would say 1D, it means just the gamma, just the tone curve. The 3D LUT is, imagine a cube. It has 6 faces, right? So there'll be, the primary colors were mapped to 3 of the faces, the RGB, and the secondary colors, yellow, cyan, magenta, are mapped to the other 3 faces in the cube. And you can distort this cube around to change the color without changing the black and white response. And so on our cameras, we then allow you to select what we call a color grading space that includes a 1D tone curve and a 3D LUT. And the LC709 LUT that I baked into the bees and other stuff that I shot, that was based on Art Adams, is a DP out of San Francisco. Has this amazing color acuity. And he engaged us because he wanted us to improve the color performance of the F5 and 55. And he wanted to have less saturation as the exposure increased, and do other things. So we did it, and it's called LC709A. Some people think it's because it's Alexa. It does look like Alexa, but it's for Art Adams.
The footage, the bridge footage, the bridge footage, was that exposed at 2000 ISO, or was that, or did you expose it at a lower ISO than exposed?
I was doing crazy things. So let's look at the metadata. So it was XAVC Intra, and the ISO 2000. This was shot with the 55 millimeter f1.8 lens, which is so awesome. And the the iris was f1.83. And you can see the capture gamma equation was S gamma 3 cine S log 3. So that's how it was captured. I shot other stuff that day that then I cranked the gain and applied NDs just to force it one way and force it the other, because I was just testing the engineer mule to see how it was going to react. And the results were stunning, so I was very pleased. And so some of these scenes are really dramatic. I'm sorry, I cannot see very well here. There were, I think I didn't import these. I have other images that are pretty good. This is also another view of the bridge with a slightly different angle and grading. And you can see the mixed lighting of the mercury vapor with a greenish hue and other stuff. Am I running very late? Yes, I'm running very late. So we can keep talking, but we're going to end the broadcast or the streaming. Thank you very much.